Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of The Context. I am Shannon Williams. I'm joined by my co-host, Darren Shepard, and we're excited to have you with us today for a discussion of all things related to the AAIF and the MCP ecosystem. So we've got a fantastic chat coming up today. Pedro from Supabase is joining us. But before we get started, you might notice we've got some new slides, and that is because we're really kind of trying to bring everything inside the AAF together. And if you guys aren't familiar with the AAIF, just a quick overview of what we are, what the organization is. This is the organization was founded last fall when the MCP protocol, as well as Goose and Agents MD, were donated to the Linux Foundation. It's been growing quite quickly since then, and now as we kind of approach the summer here of its first year, it is a pretty darn massive open source organization with 185 companies having joined it and a absolute ton of events coming up this year. The first two are less than a month away. We're going to be hosting the MCP Con event in Bangalore and in Mumbai in India in June. So the agendas are now out. The conferences are a go, and looks like it should be a fantastic agenda. Lots of great speakers and a number of excellent talks. I'm excited to be attending, and it should be a lot of fun. We also have behind that really similar MCP events in Korea and China coming up in the fall, in August and September, and then Tokyo. So you're going to have kind of a rush of these before we get into Amsterdam, Toronto, and San Jose, which are really going to be more similar to the MCP Dev Summits we ran, the Amsterdam and San Jose events. So lots going on, and the organization has been growing. A lot of great people have joined, and hopefully you're following the AIF on YouTube and on X and other places just to kind of keep abreast. There is one of the big motions right now is actually around expanding the number of projects. I think the AAF right now is still at 3, but in the conversations that have been going on at the board level, there is a lot of discussion about bringing more projects in. And I know if you are working on something interesting, or you think there is a project that would benefit from the structure of an open source foundation, now's a great time to reach out, start connecting with people at the AAF, and or reach out to us. Come present your idea here and show the world why it should be an AAF project. With that, if you haven't been keeping up on the context, we have been hosting a ton of talks the last couple months about some areas like how organizations are adopting MCP, where different sort of security projects inside of the foundation are developing. Today's talk I'm really excited about because it's really going to kind of bring a lot of that together. It's looking at the MCP ecosystem and skills and agents and everything that's happening around how AI connects to systems from the perspective of a company who is actually right in the middle of it, Supabase. And so we're really trying to bring these kind of talks to you. Today's going to also be a little bit of a new format for us. We tend to have a lot of conversations that are sort of presentations in the past. Today, we're going to try to have something that feels a little bit more like a conversation. And, we're not going to be quite as invisible at the beginning of the show. Darren and I are going to kind of participate and chat a little bit more with Pedro. So I think it's going to be a really good conversation, and I'm excited to have it. So with all that, Pedro, welcome to the conference. Now, for those of you who don't know, Pedro has spoken at the MCP Dev Summit twice now, right, Pedro? I think you were in both New York and in London giving talks. I'm just curious from your perspective, how are you keeping up with everything that's changing? Where are you guys at right now as your customers, I'm sure, are coming to you with all sorts of new requirements and new ways that they want to connect to their cloud-hosted databases?
Yeah, thanks so much for the warm introduction, Shannon, and thank you guys for having me. I'm a big fan of the show ever since even before the first MCP Dev Summit in San Francisco. So it's I'm really happy to be here. Yeah, it has been quite a ride following the MCP protocol in general, right? And how it's been evolving. It's wild to think that it's not even no, it's already 1 year old, but it's not much more than that. It's quite relatively new protocol in that sense. And of course, at Supabase, we were we consider ourselves like an early adopter of the protocol. We started by releasing just to give some more context, just a local version. This was around, I believe, April last year, and we released the STD IEO version of our MCP server, which at the moment had what we thought would be the fundamental tools to interact with Supabase. So, for those of you who don't know, Supabase is it used to be the open source Firebase option. So it's a database, Postgres database provider, but it comes out with a lot of other things for you to build the backends out of the box. So this comes as authentication server, edge function, which are the equivalent of Lambda functions if you're coming from the AWS space. We also offer real time. So all of these features were packed into this MCP server that we were already exposing on our both CLI and REST API, and we exposed them as our standard IO MCP server, and we got, since the beginning, a lot of adoption from the start. And also, while we were developing the local version of the MCP server, we figure out very quickly that the local version didn't scale at an enterprise level, and we had it to have a remote one. Right at the moment, I think around April, May, people were still debating if the server-side events or the HTTP protocol was the best for the remote version. We ended up settling with the HTTP, thankfully. And around, I think it was July. So all this that I'm describing was before joining the company, but I followed from the outside. July or August, we officially released the remote version, and ever since we've been seeing an increased adoption, like very rapidly adoption from our MCP server. If you guys are curious, I can share that we know we have a telemetry and an observability layer on top of the MCP server. Our users mostly use our MCP server to query their database. So they're plugging their agents straight to their Postgres database and letting the agent execute the SQL. So I cannot show you the numbers, but I can tell you that the difference between the usage of our execute SQL tool, it's a big gap from the first place to the second one.
So I assume you're tracking like number of users and whatnot. How have you seen like the adoption curve and stuff? It gone up or down, or is it just keep going up, or what does that look like?
Yeah. So it's quite funny because we have a dashboard for both the remotes and the local, because we still support both.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, the local one the adoption was increasing as daily active users. So we track this unique active users that would use the amount of users that would use in a specific day the MCP, both for the remote and the local, and it would see an increase of number of users on the local version before releasing the remote. Even if after releasing the remote, there's still like this gap to people starting to pick up the new version or replacing them, and some of the users might not even want to replace them. But as the protocol matured and we basically swapped on our documentation, we only have the configuration steps on our documentation to set up the remotes. We do not have the local, because we encourage our users to use the remote mainly for security reasons. And now it's funny that we've seen the remote adoption continues to grow at like a significant pace. Every week we have these funny bumps during the weekend that we see some drops, but then throughout the week the pace picks up, and we've seen the amount of daily active users in the local version decreasing actually now.
Yeah.
So at least for me, it gives me some peace, because this is exactly what I was expecting.
How are you as a percentage of the total Supabase, user base? What percentage would you say are now using an MCP to access their database? Is it 5%, 10%? Like, I'm just guessing here. I have no idea, but I'm curious how fast it's grown to be. I kind of would imagine starting to get pretty big. I think if I had a I know, in fact, I used my Supabase database with a MCP. So I'm just curious how other people, like, what's the percentage of adoption you're seeing?
Yeah, it's a very interesting take, because even in our documentation, we advise our users to not use the MCP server directly on their production database, or at least without any guardrails. Not that we do not trust our own MCP server. It's mainly because
you don't trust the agents.
Yeah,
you don't trust the people. It's not even agents. People just do dumb things.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's and this is a conversation for another day. But like, if we're shaping the agents as our image, they'll probably, it's most likely they will continue to make mistakes, right? We just expect something different from them.
Yeah. And I think all mistakes the agent makes, they're the operator's fault. It's like, no, I'm serious. It's like, because some people are like, oh, it dropped my database in production. And I'm just like, well, that was your fault. I mean, it's like, there's like, why did you even let that? Anyways, but yeah, you should not.
So just roughly, would you say it's getting into the teens? Like the number, are we into 10% or more of your overall client base you think are using MCPs?
Yeah, I don't want to give any specific number, because we don't actually have the aggregate results. We like to segment our users through our payment tiers, right? And we don't have the aggregated one. But I would say it currently would lay between the 10 and the 20% adoption overall.
Much higher than I would have thought.
Yeah. It's
I mean, Supabase is a technical product. It's used by technical people who are using AI way more aggressively than your average person, and I'm not surprised at all. I imagine within a year that number is going to be probably closer to 40.
No, I mean, I think I think, because I'm kind of curious as you've done this, because it's like when you first pick up MCP, it's like, well, this is the new hot thing, so it's kind of like, you develop an MCP server, kind of like jump on the bandwagon of like, oh, this can be useful. But like at this point, do you see it as like a real kind of like demand or ask or requirement from your users? Like, do you see like, them requesting new things or that it's becoming like an essential part of their kind of like workflow or whatever?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like so our MCP server is open source, as almost every tool that we have, if not every tool that we have. So as any open source projects, we are bombarded by issues and requests from our users, which is good, because we get feedback, we get a sense of how users are using our MCP server, and what exactly are their needs. But definitely we get, I would say that we get at least one or two issues, maybe even more. I would say like 3 to 5 every week. Someone opens an issue or a PR with a request on our MCP server, and with the increased adoption, I would say it's natural to get more and more of this.
Let's talk about that, because I mean, the approach to building MCPs keeps changing. How much have you guys refactored your MCP since you launched the web-based version? Is it kind of still roughly the same, or is it, have you started looking at things like code mode? Have you looked at, other approaches to sort of driving more efficiency or reducing the amount of context that the MCP consumes? How are you guys thinking about the MCP architecture and engineering?
Yeah, so we actually haven't changed the current version of the MCP. Like we've talking about the number of tools have been stale since November last year, if I'm not mistaken. So for a long time. This is also because we tend to treat the MCP server as this, it is a production ready tool that we would not like to break currently in production. And mainly also now the Supabase MCP server is available through Claude.ai and as a ChatGPT app. And this, for now, the submission process requires you to submit the MCP server as the snapshot when on submission. So once the MCP server is accepted on both of these, I'm not entirely sure for Cloud.md, but I'm sure for ChatGPT. Once you submit the app, it's like this snapshot on the moment of submission. So if you add another tool, this change will not reflect on the ChatGPT for now as the submission process is. So for sure now, if we were extra cautious before having these dependencies, we are now treating it as like with very, very careful if we decide to create new tools or delete the ones that we already have. But this doesn't mean that we are not also trying to innovate in some sense. You've mentioned code modes. We've been paying attention on the movement. It was this idea. Well, code mode specifically, the first time that we've actually seen it mainstream was from the Cloudflare blog post, I believe. There was some similar ideas for to also introduce this progressive disclosure thing into the MCP, but with Anthropic coming with code execution, for example. But it was more on the client side. Code mode, it's implemented on the server side, and we've been paying attention, thinking internally if it would make sense for us to expose something as a code mode solution, since it's still something that we're thinking about. It's not a guarantee that we're going to release anything. I cannot tell you that if it's going to live alongside the MCP, if we're going to replace it. There's a lot of moving parts to make this decision. What I can tell you is that for the Cloudflare, for example, decided to build their code mode MCP server alongside the one that they already had. Mostly, I would say, for compatibility reasons, but also because the code mode allows agents to gives access to all Cloudflare products, at least all of them that are exposed through their API. And in some cases, users might just want to use workers or R2 or other services from Cloudflare. So it's good to also have these two options, if you ask me.
Yeah, I really think when it comes to code mode, because I see a lot of, I think it's kind of been slow adopting, but I really actually do believe in the approach of code mode. But there's a lot of little issues we have to work out. But I really don't think it's should be so much of a concern of who's, when you write the MCP server, that you need to really kind of cater to code mode or not. Code mode to me seems like a client side detail of the agent that's consuming it or whatever. The one thing that's really kind of makes code mode a lot better is the idea of output schemas. I think that's the right term. Because then kind of what's coming out as opposed to just a string. But yeah, I don't see it as necessarily because I would just hate the idea that people have to program for code mode. It's it just doesn't logically make any sense to me. But yeah, so I mean, because for when you that's what I guess kind of a question I have for you is so it's the Cloudflare, they introduced a different code mode one. What would you see if you're in your mind? It's if we did code mode, how would that change your MCP server? In your mind, what would you guys do different?
Yeah, it's something that we're definitely. It's still an open question, right? What exactly changes? Well, out of the box, I can tell you that the amount of tools that we expose will drastically drop because we currently, I think we have 26 tools and this will drop to at least 2. I'm saying at least because, for example, we have so you can configure the Supabase MCP server through query by passing query parameters on the string, right? On the URL, and one of them it's the read only. So to only expose tools that only have read permissions or are not mutable, right? They will not mutate any of your Supabase instance. And the first thing that comes up to our mind is that, okay, the code mode, it's based on a search tool and an execute tool. A search tool to find the paths, the potential paths that you want to query on your API by filtering the Open API schema, and then the execute to actually call them. And the execute could be a get call or a post put or whatever mutable or other mutable calls, right? So we've been thinking about what if instead of just two, we have 3 tools, and this is like just an idea. The search will remain the same as described, but then you'll have an execute read and an execute write. The execute read is logged on GET requests, and the execute write will be logged on the other types of HTTP requests. So that's one thing that I can straight tell you that it would change is the amount of tools. So the token amounts, the amount of tokens that it's loaded to the agent context, and also the amount of the exposure, the amount of services that the agent is exposed, the amount of Supabase services that the agent is now exposed to, rather than the cherry-picked tools that we currently have.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because I wasn't really thinking about that because they're like, oh, because obviously, yeah, with code mode, it's like basically like do this or whatever. Yeah, it's like I'm so ridiculously opposed to that approach. I don't think it makes like because I really think that behavior of kind of like generate code and execute or whatever should all be client side. Like it should be part of like the agent, because like what happens when you do it this way is you effectively now have 2 agents. You have the LLM that's talking to the person, then they talk to your code mode, and then you have an agent in there. And the problem with that is like that you're well, one is you're paying for tokens and stuff like that, but it's this isolation of information. Like one of the beautiful things about code mode is like not only can with like a code mode approach can I stitch together your calls, I can also stitch together other calls too, and I can do a bunch of cool things. So by doing this, where it's like if every single MCP implemented their own code mode approach, like that would just like it almost like defeats the purpose. Like because what I like about code mode is like all the MCP servers, it's like for AWS. Like I'm not exactly sure how AWS structured their MCP server. Like they probably like whatever. Maybe they did the worst thing possible. But like I would be like, no, just expose like 40,000 tools, like and just let the clients figure it out, because because as soon as you put that layer on front of it of like, oh no, I have this thing where I solved all these problems for it, like while you're trying to solve those problems, you just make it worse, because like I have more flexibility if you give me those 40, all of those tools, because I can still just pick and choose the ones I want, or I can do it all client side and whatnot. So I think that the issue with the code mode right now is it's just getting slow adopted in like the clients or whatever. But it's effectively already sort of happening. It's just slow going. Kind of like like ChatGPT, like they now have like search tools and like call tools. So there's kind of dynamic dispatch. That's kind of like the first step in this, because like if you can search tools and then you go to call tools, what you can do instead of just calling the tool, you can say like, oh, well, just generate this little bit of JavaScript that will call a bunch of tools all at once. So like we're slowly kind of getting there, but I really think it should be all client side, because like I think it just causes too many problems if like everyone goes and implements this in their MCP servers. It's like it's like the wrong layer to me. But yeah, I didn't think about that. It's interesting.
No, it's all valid points, and I think like I agree with you in that sense that it's a client responsibility. When I was thinking about how code mode implementation would look like at Supabase, I reviewed the blog post, and I think I don't know if it was just one or two, but the blog posts that Anthropic released on the code execution, which was their attempt to basically get this progressive disclosure on the client side. And I find like it's a step towards, it's not perfect, but it's a step towards the client should manage all this, like you said. But I've been on the MCP space, and I know you guys have been also long enough to know that at least for now, clients have been the bottleneck for many of them.
Yeah.
Right. So I think more than just this new feature coming out, Code Mode was this scream of the server providers saying that we want some innovations, we want some progressive disclosure, and we want to control it on our hands, because clients have been very, very slow to adopt this, or like to come up with a solution, with a standardized solution that will fit them all.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a good point, and like, because my mind always kind of goes to like, like what's like the perfect solution, So in the perfect world, it'd be this way, but it's like, well, but if you do it server side, then you can address, work for all the clients. But I think it's a really interesting balance, because like an MCP, you'll say like, oh, well, the clients are really the problem, but the fact that the clients aren't moving is like a very good indicator that maybe like MCP is slightly the problem too, because it's like, we're doing this thing, but nobody will adopt it. Well, why won't they adopt it? Because, so it's like the thing with like Code Mode and stuff, like, I think it's great. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's like the speed at which it's getting adopted kind of shows of how much it's actually a real problem. Because this is what I see a lot when we go and talk to people about MCP, is like, everyone talks about these tool scalability issues and blah, 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 and how are you going to do this and how you do that and whatever. But where people practically are in their implementations is at a much smaller scale. They can just pick a couple tools. Everyone's kind of has this misconstrued idea that like after 5 tools or something like that, the LLM goes crazy. And it's like, oh no, like just look at a coding agent. They already have more than 20 tools or something like that. So it's like, so there's this practicality where it's like, so I really believe the Code Mode is, that logical idea is the right thing, and like we'll kind of go, but like it's still kind of solving a problem that like engineers want solved. That's not 100%.
And even engineers, right? Really like app developers that were trying to embed MCP into apps, not agent users, client users. I think that's where Code Mode suddenly became, where sort of the problem of bloat was at its most obvious, was when people were plugging MCPs directly into agents and tools that they were trying to do automation around. I don't think it was as big a problem for people using Cowork and people using Claude Desktop and people using
I just don't even think it was so much of a problem for like, because the problem is like what happens is someone will produce an MCP server that has like 40 tools. But then if you go add 3 of those, suddenly you have like 120 tools. You're like, it's too many. So there's like this desire or want of like, well, I just want to kind of add everything and it just kind of magically works. And like, that's good. That's where we should get to. We're figuring that out. But like the trade-off is like, well, kind of pick the ones you actually need. And that kind of works for a lot. It's like, and like you can get by really like most of the time with that. Like you don't really need so many tools, but because like you're saying, like the number one is like query. It's like, well, yeah, that's the one you really care about. And then, but all these other things, progressive disclosure, and like, I kind of feel like we know the solution to all these things. It's just more of like, we just kind of have to figure out the pragmatic way of getting them all into the clients and whatnot. And it's gonna work. Like the problem for MCP, like I just say, is like the client is the issue. And that's really like, I kind of feel like MCP as a protocol to a certain degree is almost like done. Like we just need like fix the real issues that are real barriers. We don't so much need much more great features. We need the clients to adopt it.
What are the real barriers though? I mean, that's kind of a hand wavy problem.
Right.
What do you think is that fix the issues that are the real barriers? What are those?
Oh, no, I'm not saying there's real, like so when there's like a new version of MCP, you'll see like a spec, you'll see there's a couple like little things like we added this one field. We want those little changes are always super useful because they're like somebody used MCP in production and ran into a realistic issue. And if you just added this one field, it would really help, right? As opposed to something like tasks where it's like, hey, it's kind of like, if you build it, they will come, where like, oh, if we could do this use case, we could use MCP in this way, and then it would be really cool. So I'm saying like the real barriers are like the ones you actually, so it's not like, because I don't really
fix the bugs, don't necessarily fix the scope of
so I think the barrier, right, the big barrier right now is just how the clients can adopt it. But there's been this battle between like, well, maybe MCP was the wrong solution and CLI was the right solution. But CLI is like, can't possibly be the generic solution for everything. So I probably shouldn't say can't possibly, but like, it just pragmatically, MCP ends up working out kind of like as the best common denominator, because you can always wrap MCP in a CLI. It's like, that's kind of the easiest thing. So it's like, if you do an MCP, it's gonna work everywhere, but there's these scalability issues of like how the clients actually use them. Those are kind of some of the issues, but they're being addressed as they need to be. That's what I feel like. It's like the clients didn't move faster because I don't think they saw enough need for it, but now they do. And so it's like ChatGPT, so I think
it's funny though, because like at OBOT, we've been just inundated the last, I don't know, maybe like, it's not even that long, like 2 months, with companies coming to us like, we suddenly have this explosion of skills. We have no idea how to manage them. They're duplicated. We need to have central skills management. There's skills we want pushed to every client. We've got a client zoo right now with tons of different tons of different endpoints that we're managing against. So, half the team is using Cursor, and other people are using Claude Code, and other people are using something they open code, and then there's all the end users who are using Microsoft or ChatGPT Enterprise. So there's this complexity on the client side, and they're actually quite bullish on skills being something that can solve most of the problems of most of the users. And I know you guys have jumped into agent skills as well, Pedro. We're getting asked just immediately, we need help managing skills at quite large scale, thousands of users. I need a way to drop these skills onto laptops. I need a way to determine what skills are actually being used and getting pulled in without authorization, remediate those kind of problems. So what are you guys hearing on sort of skill adoption? I know you've pushed Supabase skills out there. I think there's a Postgres skill as well. What's going on there, and how is skills changing your thinking?
So we see skills as this very, very powerful tool to basically fill the gaps, as you mentioned, that the MCP servers cannot, or MCP in general cannot fill alone. This is like providing more context without bloating the context straight away, because the tools, at least for now, the MCP tools are always loaded to context once the MCP is loaded. And with skills, you have this progressive disclosure baked in since the beginning. The agent only sees there's this skill and there's a little description, and only then they will see the actual content of the skill. It's I think Supabase in that sense, it's a great example on two different types of skills, because as you mentioned correctly, we do have two different agent skills for now. We're distributing the Supabase Postgres best practices, which has a set of years of experience working with Postgres baked into this agent skill file that has a lot of reference files with each one of them with the like best practice, whether it's like index to performance to security and other categories baked into reference files, loaded into or downloaded alongside the skill.md. And then we also released the service as agent skill, so the Supabase agent skill that is specifically to help agents work with Supabase like as a service, basically the platform in general. It has information about the CLI, the MCP server, so basically the interface that you can interact with Supabase, points to our documentation and like best practices or must knowns that are like almost written in stone, and it will likely not change. For the latter ones, so for these Supabase specific agent skills, we took this approach of we don't only have one reference file, and it's actually like the feedback reference file. So if if the agent gets stuck and would like to provide us any feedback, we would ask the user if you can open an issue on our GitHub repo, on the agent skill GitHub repo. So we can get this sort of feedback in a non-intrusive way. But everything that it's on the skill.md file, we treat it as almost immutable, or as immutable as it can be. So for this to be possible, we put it there, as I've said, instructions that truths, things that are true on every, that has been true on every version of Supabase, or like for ever since Supabase was released. We were talking about row level security policies to have to be enforced on every public schema. So this is one measure that it's true for every Supabase project. But also we decided to, for every specific Supabase specific question that it's not in the skill, just point to our documentation. The agents, most of them have access to the internet, either through a tool or can just browse and search the web, use curl to fetch web pages. We also, through our MCP server, we have a search docs tool that the users, that the agent can use it, and underneath it uses our GraphQL API to do this semantic search tool, like you're using a search engine but for our docs. So we decided to, we are already putting a lot of effort to maintain our documentation. Let's not just repeat it and having one more thing to maintain alongside the documentation. This the information that the agent is looking for most likely is already somewhere along the documentation, guides, troubleshooting guides. You might argue that since we're open source, might rely as well on GitHub issues or change logs. So that might be another thing to explore to add. But our mindset has been, and for the tooling as well, leave it to the documentation, keep one single source of truth. And I think from experience, like I have no data on this, but this is just my intuition from what I've seen. I think most of agent skills creators are not aware of the maintenance burdens that they're creating with creating skills that will most likely either will become outdated quite quickly, or creating or bundling all the information into these reference files, while the agents currently are being very lazy to load one or two reference files or even read the skill at all, even if the description is well tailored. So I think we're still too early for people to realize that. But in the future, as the number of agent skills out there increases and the number of the adoption as well, I think people will realize how poorly some of the agent skills are being written at the moment, because they're basically baking workflows that are very prone to be outdated very quickly, especially nowadays that things change quite quickly.
It's funny with skills, like, because I'm very like pro skills now, that I'm just glad we have this concept of like basically packaging and managing a prompt or whatever. But it bugged me in the beginning, where it was like, the whole idea of progressive discovery or disclosure, what was the right thing? Like, that's a brilliant concept. Like, that's something you should really, really, kind of take to heart, understand, because it was like, well, why do we need this dumb concept called skills? Because it's like, basically all you really need to do is just like give it a markdown file and, have it, you can have links to other files or whatever, or give it a, so it's like, well, that file could be up on the internet. It could be whatever. So it's like, fundamentally, it's like, it's just this, point to a table of contents or whatever. So I really like kind of what you're saying, where it's like the skill doesn't need to encapsulate all the information and you're gonna have to maintain that skill. You're just pointing the agent to where it can get more information, and then you can manage that. I was curious, so if we give it a search tool, like I'm sure it's doing really good at that, because LLMs are really good, really well trained now to kind of make the decision of when to search. But do you also give it like a link to your documentation that would be like a markdown format or something, where it's like, oh, here's the table of contents and this is where it can find the full documentation?
Yeah, so it's funny that you asked that. I totally forgot on the briefing to mention this, but besides the content API, we also released this experiment based exactly on progressive disclosure to expose our documentation through SSH. So we're currently hosting our documentation over an SSH server that has inside of it a lot of the our documentation as a markdown file. If you have any chance to either share the screen or
Yeah, put it up. I can share.
or share the link, I could gladly just show you. Wait, I think
That's a really clever idea.
Yeah, I think here I can share the screen. Let me see if perfect.
Huh.
Okay, so yeah, we basically this is currently live. You can find it on supabase.sh, and it's based on this exact idea of agents are very good at one, progressive disclosure, and two, navigating file systems, and very familiar with Bash and Linux-based commands. So we decided to join both and give an interface that it's friendly for agents to browse the documentation as they were navigating the documentation like in a local file system. It's let me see if I can change. Oh, no. So I can give you like a live demo. Sorry for the messy demonstration here, but let me see if I can share my whole.
This is available already, right? This is something that's already out there.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know if you guys can see my full screen, right? Yeah. So to show you guys, so this is something that humans can also explore. This was thought. So it was a concept thought for agents, but the users can also navigate this and explore. So we at the root, so you can see, guys, the root is a very simple setup. You have the agents.md that you can just import to your to your agent context, and they will already know how to use how to query the server. It's a very simple one. I can show you guys the content. So as you can see, it just shows some examples of commands that it can execute. We have the setup, and also baked into this agent command, we have a setup command that you can already pipe into. Honestly, the only Cloud Code has this pipe functionality, but you can find you can also set up using the agents commands on other agent types like Codex, Cursor CLI, Gemini CLI, and others. And as you would see, it's basically like navigating any type of Linux file system. You can, let me see, yeah. So you can see that we have all the documentation in the Markdown and also packed under folders or directories, encapsulated in this server, with all upon the idea of progressive disclosure, basically.
This is a great idea. I'm just out of just random curiosity. Is this actually implemented like not as a real Linux? Like, is it like using like just Bash and like its JavaScript server side? Like, so yes. It's a fake shell. That's so cool.
We currently have it hosted on a VPS, and we use just Bash also to emulate the Linux based, and also gives us more control on which tools we can allow the agent to run. So we want to only allow read-only tools to run, right? Cat, ls, and other of these type of tools.
Yeah, that's why I kind of, because I had made this statement before where I'm like, oh, CLI can't possibly be the answer to everything. But then when you look at something like just Bash, it's like, it's like it looks like CLI. So, but this is actually a really cool idea. I did not think about, because I know because I've seen this pattern done a lot where it's like, okay, well, here's the docs, and it downloads like the table of contents markdown, and then it has to download all the other ones. But it's kind of like a slow and crummy thing because they have to have some like web fetch or download tool to write it, and a lot of times it goes into the tools. Yeah, there's just a lot of problems I've noticed. But this is really a really clever approach. So yeah.
Pedro, you had mentioned that you guys have rolled out a couple of these agent skills and docs and things like this. I know you were specifically interested in chatting a little bit about versioning of agent skills, and this is something that you've been kind of playing around and looking at a bit of a proposal on. Want to just sort of walk us through this? I mean, this makes perfect sense to me on its surface, but maybe walk through the problem and kind of explain what you've been thinking about there.
Yes. So I was the one responsible with the release of the Supabase agent skills. So as I was learning more about it, and we internally were questioning ourselves, also because of the problems that I've mentioned with let's just keep one single source of truth, because we want to maintain the efforts to maintain the skill to be as low as possible. And this concern is also caused by the lack of a distribution, like a standardized distribution and versioning system that we don't have for now on agent skills. So on this sense, there are things that are under development at the moment. The agent skills, there is this agentskills.io website that is being actively maintained, I think mainly by Anthropic, more specifically by Jonathan Effer, I believe. He's an engineer in Anthropic, and he's also responsible for this distribution proposal that is currently in place. So it's for now it's just a proposal, and currently the idea is to expose the skills for discoverability. Versioning is still an open question, but for discoverability, it's to expose the skills on the well-known / agent skills path, right? So each vendor will be responsible to package all skills, or at least pointing all skills that they own, and putting them all inside an index.json under this well-known path, so that agents or registries or whatever, so consumers or clients can easily find and download the agent skills for each vendor. So I've actually, since it's in proposal and these things can be a bit messy, I've actually vibe coded a bit web page. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, it's here. I sarcastically called skill PM in reference to NPM, but honestly, it's nothing like, it's not a package manager. It's for this is specifically to showcase the current state of the. I need to wait. This is why live demos are a terrible idea. But let me just skill PM. Sorry for the web and npm dev. Okay.
Are you sharing something else? Because we're just seeing the browser still. There we go.
Yeah. Okay. Now you're seeing. Yeah. I could also. I just realized that I could show you the one that I'm currently hosting online, but now we're rolling with this one. So basically, it's what I've described. Main point: an index.json under the well-known agent skills path, and this will allow consumers to navigate, understand, discover the skills that a specific vendor has. And currently, it's only available, or it only displays the latest version of the skills. So versioning is still an open question. Like, should agent skills, and I would love to have your takes on this. Should agent skills be versioned? Because you can compare them to npm packages, or like packages in general, in the sense that it's something that it's currently constantly evolving. But at the same time, these are mainly, or 90% of the skills that are out there are just live documentation, right? It's just instructions for the agents. So for us, for publishers, it's always in our best interest to that our clients or the consumers have the latest version of skills, right? Because it's usually the workflows that make sense for our service, for a tool, for whatever you're providing, right? So I'm actually curious to hear your thoughts on should agent skills should be versioned or not.
Yeah, I really don't think, so one, I love the idea of well-known. Like, I hate the idea of like, oh, let's create a skills registry. Like, I really think anything that has centralized it just ends up being the wrong solution. Like, we need to look at like internet scale here. What's the easiest way to scale the internet? It's like we already have websites. Everyone has a domain. The DNS is the only thing we trust in this world, even though it's always the problem. So if you look at a web page is evergreen. Like, so I think skills should be evergreen also. I don't quite understand, because like when you look at it from that like engineering mentality of like, no, I'm going to package this one and I want to get the same one, whatever. But it's kind of this weird thing where it's like, well, what the skill, if it's hosted on this website, shouldn't it refer to this website? So why would you package an older version? Like, but I know there's this idea that no, agents are unpredictable and I want this predictability, blah, 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 all this stuff. But we also have to realize agents are interacting with a world that's dynamically changing too. So the predictability, you just really can't have that mindset of like, no, I need the exact same prompt because I've tested that prompt. It's like, well, at that point, then you don't even care about well-known. It's like, well, you copied that file. So I don't think there should be any versioning. I actually like from this specification, the idea of like, I really think the specification for this is as simple as .well-known skills MD, no JSON file at all, because there's also because there's a lot of also weird things where it's like, well, because the versioning I don't think makes sense, but also like the digest actually isn't, from a security perspective, putting a digest in there doesn't actually make any sense. It doesn't. You can't have a it's like a regular security thing where it's like, if the place where you download the digest is the same place where you get the asset, then whoever can hijack the asset can hijack the digest too. Like, they have to be separate. So like if you actually wanted security, then you would say like, no, I should assign it or something like that. But then you get into this point where it's like, well, on a web browser, I hit index.html, and at no point do I ever confirm the security of index.html. Like, I download that and that's been working fine. So I really think the whole thing is over designed. It's like skills.md, that's it. Because it's the simplest, like the solutions just end up being the simplest possible thing. And it makes sense because it's like, well, you can do whatever the heck you want, because you can tell your clients, like your customers, like, oh, we actually version our skills.md. So just do skills.md ?v1. You're free to do that. Why not? But like the default behavior is like, just find the skill, because websites are evergreen. This is I think like the whole specification is just kind of too much. But I do 100% believe we do need this. We just need a well-known, but it's just a very simple solution of skills, and it's just the skills MD, and then you can do whatever the heck you want with it,
Yeah, I also agree that the simplest the best in this case, and probably thinking about the distribution first and then the versioning of this open question would be smarter. I would say that for the digest, I think it makes sense for at least the current state of the spec. Allows publishers to have relative paths, but also absolute. So you can have your agent skills on a different server, on a CDN or a GitHub release, for example.
So like there's this weird kind of disconnect to me, is like a lot of time, so this is, I think, the thing that kind of bugs me is like skills have this idea of like, oh, you can package assets with it. And then I think as soon as you get into the package and it's a tarball, and because that was like the original Anthropic thing of like, oh, skills is actually this like tarball asset, and they have a validator and all that stuff. I think it's over engineering. Like if you think about a skill as pretty much just a markdown file, like the markdown file, because like there's an idea of like when you load the skill in all of the ones that load, it's like, here's the skill and it's like relative to this, like this is the directory where it's in. So if you load the skill from the internet, then it's relative to this directory, and you can tell the agent that that's where that Python file is, that it could just download and run, you know. So I really like, I think Vercel's NPM tool to install skills is a good example of like how we like take a very simple concept and make it ridiculously complicated, where it's like a markdown, it's like skills is just basically packaging up prompts for the most part. Once we get into like packaging the code with it, we start getting a little too crazy. But like, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but there's no reason why you can't just get the skill, and the skill tells you where to get the code.
So then what's your answer to combining? Like, it feels like when I talk to people trying to bring this to the actual users, they want to deliver kind of pretty much packaged things. Like they want to deliver, especially to a non-engineer, right? They want to deliver skills. They want to deliver the MCP that it's going to call, or the CLI that's going to call. They want the whole thing, and they want to many cases run locally because it's a skill to work with PowerPoint, or it's a skill to work with, you know, something they have on their local machine. What's the answer then if it's not sort of this more heavier weight sort of NPM like thing? Then it becomes, you're saying it's a website, it's just like a lightweight
no,
thing.
I'm just saying, if you just focus on skills as being like the markdown, the one markdown file,
yeah,
that gives you the power to effectively do anything, because it can run code, like it can download. It's like, as long as you tell it, because the problem is like once you start doing a tarball, then it becomes like this big, you know, it's like, oh, well, now we're gonna scan, like it balloons into this like very complicated thing where it's like it's just a file and you can get it from anywhere. So I don't see, because like even if like you want to package code with it, it's typically like the best approach is like, well, just a little Python file or a little JavaScript file, like not a whole NPM, but yeah.
No, I'm just curious if what you're pitching is to have this skill.md or index.md file under the well-known path to give instructions on the agent how to find the skills or to navigate the.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, so I mean, I would like, you know, like, because I'm gonna always tend towards like being a little bit too like purist in a design or whatnot. So like the compromise I think would be is like, okay, well then, you know, you can hit, you know, well-known skills, and then the content type that comes back is going to be either text plain or X tarball, and then if it's a tarball, it's a tarball. You extract it, you whatever. So I'm kind of fine like with that, but I don't like the idea of like, oh, it should be a JSON file. You read the JSON file, it has a digest. You point to the. It's just like, why? Like to me, it's like it's theater. It's like, what are you actually accomplishing with adding all of this stuff? It's like, I don't know what you're really trying to solve, because it's like, oh, well, it's this, but then you can point this on the CDN. And it's like, yeah, but I can put / anything on a CDN. Like, he's like, anybody can put anything. It's just route the thing to a CDN. So I don't know that like any of this stuff, like the structure, but I think, you know, as I'm like arguing, I realize the impracticality of what I'm arguing for. I would say like a reasonable compromise is to say like, oh, well-known skills, and then it would be the markdown, and then it's just based on the content type. The content type that comes back, it's a tarball, it's a text plain, just you know, very built into the web. That's how.
I would add on top of that is I believe that this is being conceived this way, thinking of clients, not exactly agents that will consume this, because when you're fetching a file over the web, there's no progressive disclosure thing or that you can implement, right? You're downloading the full file. So if you're saying, even if you provide this index.md file with the skill for the Supabase best practice skill, you can find it on this link and use it whenever you want this. And the Supabase skill are on that direction. You're still importing everything from the beginning, right? While with the index.json, you have this structured way that can be consumed by a client even before getting loaded into the context, and this allows you to distribute the skills over different protocols. For example, there's this working group at the moment that are discussing if MCP could be the protocol to export or to support tools.
That's crazy. Like because like HTTP is the only protocol.
Like this, I want to discuss the viability of this. A structure like this allows clients to freely load the skills and decide when to expose them to the agent or not locally.
As I think through this or whatever, there are some practical things. Like, so I think if you're designing something, you should design it agent first, human second. So agent first to me is like, just load the skill. Like, why not? Like, because agents can already, like, you know, they'll the problem is like, if you try to overcompensate for the agent, then you just limit the agent. Whereas like, if the agent can be like, oh, I'm going to download this skill, but like, I'll just download it to file and then look at the head of it or whatever. You know, it's like it already does that today, where it knows like, oh, I don't want to blow up my context, so I don't read the full file, right? They're smart enough. So it's like, I think like having to just download the skill directly is like the simplest thing. But there's a very practical thing, which is if I had a tool like Claude Desktop or whatever, and I want to point to a domain, you want to know from a tool perspective for the human, is there a skill available? And you want to load like maybe an icon and a description and some metadata about the skill. So I do think it would make sense to have a secondary like JSON file that's more oriented towards human and tool consumption, not AI LLM consumption. But I would separate the two things, like and have, because the agent first one is like that's the best, because I feel like whenever I see a specification that starts with a JSON file, like my idea is like, oh, this is designed for tooling. It's like it's not designed for AI. Like they're designing it for tooling. So it's like, oh, well, something else is going to see the agent and then do something, or see the skill, but then it's annoying because it's like, well, that's exactly what I don't want in the future. Is like I don't want to have to do, like, I want the AI, because like the idea of even having to pick and load skills, because like the skills is just going to end up being the I always thought like it would make sense that there would be like index.md was a standard, you know. So it's like, oh, instead of hitting index.html for your web server, you just said index. And that's the home page for an agent. But the skills can end up just being the home page for the agent, right? It's like, oh, so yeah. So I don't know. It's just this perspective. So I think there's some practical. I get all the practical things, but I put them all as like the secondary. Yeah. But
I want to be a little conscious of time.
Yes.
We're about an hour of shooting the shit on agents and skills and MCPs. Pedro, you had mentioned a little bit when we were chatting earlier about sort of the next thing you guys have is plugins that you've been sort of talking about internally. And I know we only have a few minutes left, but if you want to kind of just maybe touch on that for a bit and just explain how important you see that, what you guys are doing. I think you've already released some plugins for like Cloud Code and Codex, but what's the direction you're leaning in that direction? How do you see it as being differentiated from the others, and what's your hope there?
Yeah, so we've released we currently have 4 different plugins, these agent plugins. As a side note, it's for now it's from the context you can see that it's agent plugins or plugins for AI as a code assistants. But in the future, if we're talking about plugins in general, and if we don't standardize the way we mentioned this, we will end up on this very messy space, just calling plugins to everything basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do have 4 plugins for Cursor, Codex, Cloud Codes, and Gemini CLI. They call them extensions there, but it's essentially the same concept. And the agent plugins is basically a way for vendors to package every asset or artifact that they have, or any tooling that they would like to expose to agents on a single on a portable and single point of way. So this could be the MCP server, your agent skills, hooks, agents, whatever you would like to port and to expose to agents, and this could be just loaded into the clients.
How did you guys approach it? What did you build with? Like what's in your plugins right now?
So currently we're porting for the 4 of them, our MCP server and the 2 agent skills.
So it's basically a way to package up, and that's what it seems like to me. It's just a way to package up a system prompt plus an agent or plus a skills and an MCP into one thing. Is that how you guys approach it?
Yeah, mainly.
Can you plug into hooks too?
Yes.
Or, I don't know. So I absolutely hate these plugins. I do not want these plugins to exist. Like there needs to be a better approach. Because as you're saying,
it makes a lot of sense to me, Darren. I mean, I just talk to companies and they're like, oh, I would like to give a company travel plugin. And it's like, it's got MCPs, it's got policy, it's got agent, but it's like a agent. Like it's a full agent that I've defined that I don't want a lot of, I don't want to have to.
Oh, it's like, it's so
send people to a website. I just want to be able to use their client to go and do this.
It's like, I don't, because it's like, so what do you practically like? I mean, I get the idea of like bundling, but like something just seems completely wrong with this approach. One, because everyone isn't like, it's so frustrating that every single coding agent supports the same feature in a slightly different format or whatever, you know. But it's like,
fair to bitch about that. That's an easy thing to bitch about. But like, answer the like, how do you do this if not this? Like, how do I deliver something that's well packaged and needs to conform to a pretty specific set of requirements?
I know
virtual pharmacist. If I want to drop in my virtual pharmacist, right? Like, how do I give that to the client?
So there's two things. Is like, one is, okay, first off, skills already have the idea of like progressive disclosure, right? So then it's like, you know what, like you package. So, you know, why do you need to deliver more than one skill? Like, I mean, I get why you might want a couple skills, but like the problem, is like, no. This is the thing,
and a couple MCP servers.
No, Shannon, but like this is the thing is like once you say, oh, I have this plugin that has these 5 skills, but you know what? I don't want these 5 skills. So what skills am I going to turn on and off? So it's like now it becomes this management thing of like,
it's not to the user, right? Like that's to the agent. To me, the whole idea of these plugins is I want to drop in an agent like that's very, very tightly designed. Like, but I want it to live on the client. I don't want it to be living on a website somewhere.
But that could be like agent policy or whatever. Like I don't know that needs like.
But the architecture should be the same. It should be something I add to my client and I get a Supabase admin effectively.
I know, but what I'm saying is like you create the Supabase plugin, so you get one plugin from the vendor. So then if everyone's going to install that one plugin, how does it like? Because if you produce 40 skills, but you're like, no, I only want 3 of the skills. Like, how do you then manage what those 3 skills are? Like, it doesn't.
But it's not on to you, right? It's not to the developer. Like the whole point to me of these plugins is I'm going away from that model. I'm going to a less prescriptive by the user and more prescriptive by the architect.
Right. But that's like if you have an intermediate layer where it's like vendor. That's why I said it's like almost like a policy layer of like, because that makes sense of like something where it's like, oh, we want everyone to have this, and this installed and that. It's kind of, that's more like a policy than a packaging thing or whatever. Because the problem is understand that once you create a bundle, does that bundle
drop in like a predefined agent? I want to give somebody like an actual useful agent that can run and do shit that I tested and feel good about.
Yeah, that's Git. It's like, so like you can already do that today. You just want to so the problem is I have an agent and then I want to start bringing in plugins. I have multiple plugins. The plugins have dependencies. It's like once you invent a concept, they explode into this weird thing of like, what are you really trying to solve? And what are the actual like knobs and stuff? Like it just, something's not right about plugins that it's just like, to me, like, I just don't.
Feel to me like the perfectly natural next step. Like I look at plugins and think like, yep, I want that. That's exactly what I want as a consumer. I want a friggin' travel plugin.
No. Okay,
from, United.
Very specific one. Oh, okay. Do I want to install the Supabase skill or do I want to install the Supabase plugin?
Yeah, if I'm an engineer who has like a lot of flexibility, sure, maybe the skill. As a consumer, I want the agent. I want
thing. It's like why?
Perfect example is like all of the crappy agents in ChatGPT. They all suck. They're all sort of MCP. I wish every one of them was more like an actual system prompt driven agent with multiple skills and access to us. Like if I had a Spotify agent that really knew Spotify, could do everything with Spotify, and was like the system prompt was defined as I'm your Spotify person.
You're talking about too high of a level, because it's like yeah, great, but like it just doesn't.
That's where we're at. We've done all the primitives. The primitives exist. I've got MCPs. I've got skills. I've got ways to now just let me package it all up into some final consumable that gets
I get your
out. Like right now, I have to feel like I have to design every agent. I've got to go build it again. I've got to figure out how to build, and I don't want to do that. I'm not good at doing that. And it's like every agent I want to build is a.
I know, but Shannon,
development process.
What's the difference if you have a skill versus a plugin? Like
the system prompt. Start with that. Like I want the
system prompt.
No, the skill is not the system prompt. The skill is subsystem. Like it's.
You don't actually ever want to influence the system prompt. That's like not. I don't know. So it's not a good idea. Like, can you do that with plugins? Can you influence the system prompt? It's just not a good idea. Like to allow pluggable things to influence the system prompt. That is.
I mean, by loading the skill, you cannot influence the system prompt, but you can influence the behavior of the.
Because it comes as a system reminder or developer message or whatever. But so the skill, that's what I'm saying. Skills are like packaged system prompts. That's basically what a skill kind of is. But it's not a real system prompt. It's not actually put into the system, because you don't do that. Like you don't want to screw with the system prompt. But like So Shannon, like I get your objective. I'm just saying the mechanism doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't logically, like, why do I need
solve this problem then? Because I am telling you, without something soon, this is the bottleneck. Is right now, it's like every time I want to do something, build a personal assistant, it's an engineering effort. It's like an architecting effort.
And
I want to build out a fully built, good travel advisor.
You're talking about a different thing, because if Supabase had a plugin, what you want is the thing that installs the 5 plugins for you.
Yeah,
exactly.
Whatever you call this, but that to me is the aggregated thing. It's like we're killing ourselves expecting everyone to be friggin' engineers, and it's a waste of time.
But from Darren, but let me tell you from a vendor perspective, from a publisher perspective, plugins are an amazing way for mostly for predictability. Like we can then package agent skills specifically to work with our MCP server, because we have different interfaces for agents to interact with Supabase, as I mentioned, like the CLI or the MCP server. If we bundle them together and they have a way to know that, okay, you can think of the Supabase agent plugin as a superset, an extension of an agent to be an expert on Supabase. And this is like the toolkit, the toolbox to work with Supabase. And we can customize, tailor-made this plugin way more than just the agent skills separately and the MCP server separately. If we know that they're going to be paired, when we're talking about these two, but we can put this also hooks or sub-agents, everything that we would think that would improve their knowledge or the context on Supabase. This gives us a lot of, we basically can now improve the service or the knowledge or the depth about they know about Supabase, and narrow the workflows to like predictability, basically. So on the vendor perspective, it's very useful.
So it's like, I think it makes sense, but like I think part of it is just the thing that there's like I mean it's so obnoxious that Claude Code won't adopt any standards, but like if there was actually a standard, because like we're coming up with like very it's like skills or command, but like what do you actually put in yours today? Like what's actually the artifacts that you have in there?
It's the MCP server as we distribute it, and the 2 agent skills that we have. So. Because a way to bundle in the problem we're solving with the Supabase agent plugin at the moment is the doubt that our users have: should I install the MCP? Should I install the agent skill? Should I use them together? yes, in our case, yes, you don't have to use. You can use the agent skill as a standalone because we have instructions on how to use the CLI or if the MCP is not available. But the agentic workflow would be with the MCP. So if there's two together, the interface is more agent friendly.
So like you see, like if you were to do a CLI based approach, like, well, I guess what to say, it's like one of the problems with MCP right now is that there's not like the nice thing about CLI things is you can put in the skill like, oh, we'll use these commands, and if they're regular commands and whatnot, they're just already available. Or there's a very straightforward way to get commands like npx install or whatever. But MCP has nothing similar to that. There's like no agentic way to obtain and install MCP servers. So it's like, that's one of the things that I think is a problem right now, is that like there's good agentic ways. Because I mean, I think because part of this like bugs me too is just the fact that it's like, it's 100% oriented towards like, there's like, this is not agentic at all. Like I can't, but I can get like on board with like some actual standard of, but it just bugs me because it's like, well, besides skills, what else is it? And it's like, well, if it's like nobody's agreed on hooks, so there's no like common approach for hooks. So besides that, then it's just MCP. That I don't know. Like I don't like. I think there's just more to refine there. But Shannon, what you actually want is like more like features. Like in an IDE, you have plugins, then you have a group of plugins, and that becomes a feature. Like that's what you actually. But that shows the complexity of what you start doing, and it's like, is it really worth it? And I don't know. Like I just find most of the solutions just end up being so simple in this space. Anyways.
Yeah, sure.
No, they do. They're so like they end up being really, because it's like even like MCP is like it's like it's way more complicated than it needs to be, and most people do like the simplest bare bones approach to it, and that's what actually works. And you go over the board with all this other stuff. It's because like even like DCR and those things are really struggling. But like,
all right. I think we gotta wrap this up. We're an hour and 15 minutes. This new format sucks, guys. I'm just gonna say that. When we had presentations, 20 minutes, bang, in, out. This has been great.
If you let me talk, I'm just gonna start talking.
Chat. It's like you haven't talked in months. It's the problem with spending all your time working on agents and
give me a forum to
get an actual human on the other side. You just want to blab. Pedro, thank you so much. I know you're in Macedonia this week, and usually you're out in Lisbon, but thanks for taking the time to jump in and share what's going on at Supabase. Any advice, like just to close with, any advice you would give to other teams that are, trying to build their agentic hooks column? Like what, if you're a smaller company than Supabase, you're resource constrained, where should you start? Where should you finish? Like maybe just take us out on that. What's the advice you would give to another team, maybe an internal team at a company that's really just like, okay, how do I take my system and make it consumable in the current world? Where do I start?
Yeah, it's I would say the best advice would be to be pragmatic, and especially for engineers like myself, to be aware that everything that you're building right now, whether it's an MCP server, agent skill, plugin, whatever, someone will have to maintain that. So because if you have to take something from this conversation, if you reach this far, is that many of the things that we are now building are in some sense duplicating what we already have. MCP, you can argue that MCPs are duplicating many of the features that we are already exposing through the CLI. Agent skills are duplicating things that could be on the documentation. So bear in mind that try not to duplicate features as you will, unless it's strictly necessary, because someone will have to maintain them, and that someone could be you.
Yeah, how big is your team working on this stuff? Like we're
3 people at the moment.
Yeah. So 3 people full-time working just on AI hooks, call it, like just on this side of how agents can interface with Supabase better.
Yes, on all interfaces, on all AI friendly interfaces. Yeah.
Love it. Pedro, so nice to talk to you. It sounds like you guys are doing absolutely bang up job of sort of transitioning from old era to new era at Supabase. So thanks so much, Darren. As always, fun to argue and discuss the world changing about us. We will be back in a week, I think, with Aviatrix talking about network security and MCPs and a bunch of things like that. So really great discussion today. Thanks everyone for joining us. And you can find all of these conversations on our YouTube channel. Take care.
Thank you.